"Stop! Someone's on the tracks!" The shout sliced through the air, jolting the sleepy crowd into sudden awareness. Jordan Rivers froze mid-step, his eyes snapping toward the source of the voice. He was 2 platforms away, just coming off the stairs at Fulton Street Station. All around him, commuters halted, some turned their heads, others instinctively reached for their phones, but no one moved. Not yet. The screech of a train echoed faintly in the distance, low and metallic like a warning growl. Jordan's heart skipped. He dropped his gaze toward the far track and saw her. A young woman, blonde hair pulled in a ponytail, pale skin, navy blue jacket bunched in her lap. Her wheelchair had tilted slightly forward, the right front wheel caught between the track rail and the platform edge. She wasn't yelling. She was frozen, mouth parted in shock, hands gripping the armrests so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Her legs didn't move. She was stuck. Jordan didn't remember moving at first. It was like his body had started without him. He pushed past 2 men in suits, leapt over a duffel bag someone had left near the stairwell, and sprinted down the platform. His name was being called behind him. He thought someone shouted, "Hey man, don't!" But he didn't listen. He had one thought: not today, not under my watch. The last time he felt this exact pulse in his chest was when his mother collapsed on the kitchen floor 3 months ago, clutching her chest while trying to carry laundry. He had frozen back then. He wasn't about to do it again. The girl's wheelchair rocked as she tried to back up. Her voice cracked. "Help, please." Jordan dropped his backpack. It hit the concrete with a thud. He tore off his jacket mid-run, tossing it aside. The access ladder paint chipped. A faded emergency-only sign bolted to the wall was 10 feet ahead. His boots slammed the metal rungs 2 at a time. Halfway down, he slipped. One leg scraped hard against the rusted edge, but he didn't stop. The gravel and oil stench of the track floor rose to meet him. The train horn blew on short, shrill. Closer now. He turned and sprinted across the track bed. The girl was still stuck, her lips trembling, eyes locked on his. He could hear her breath, fast and shallow, a sound too similar to his own mother's wheezing in that hospital bed months ago. "Don't move," he barked, voice calm even as his fingers shook. He crouched low, gripped the cold metal frame of the wheelchair, and pulled. Nothing. It didn't budge. He repositioned his feet, leaned his back into it, gritted his teeth, and pulled again. The front wheels refused to move, wedged in like the track had been built to trap them. Another blast of the train horn. Louder. The vibrations hummed through the rails. Someone above shouted, "Call someone. Do something." Jordan shouted without looking up. "I need help down here. Now." Silence. Then a voice. "Hang on. I'm coming." A woman, mid-30s, dressed in a navy business suit, barefoot, hair loose. She descended the ladder faster than seemed possible in a skirt. She landed beside him, breath already heavy. "You take the back," she said without introduction. "I've got her arms." They moved like they'd rehearsed it. 1, 2, lift. Jordan hoisted the back handles while the woman wrapped both arms under the girl's arms, anchoring her like a human harness. The frame groaned, scraped. One front wheel popped loose than the other. But the tracks were uneven. The chair wobbled violently. The train appeared in the tunnel lights, blinding, horn screaming. "We're not gonna make it," the woman hissed. Jordan didn't hear her. He lunged forward, hands burning as he dragged the chair across the rocks. The train's light grew hotter. The rails began to shake. "On 3, he shouted. 1, 2. The girl's hand slipped off the armrest. Her body jolted. 3. They heaved. The chair shot upward then tilted. One wheel caught on the edge. Jordan snarled, dug his foot in the gravel, and yanked again. The chair cleared the lip. Jordan threw himself sideways against the wall of the platform trench just as the train thundered past. Wind blasted his face like a slap. He stayed crouched, eyes clenched shut, until the train was gone. Silence returned, pierced only by the sound of the girl sobbing. He looked up. The woman had pulled the girl safely onto the platform. Her knees gave out, and she collapsed to a seated position, chest heaving. Jordan reached up with both hands. The woman leaned down and pulled. Their grips met firm, human, alive. Cheers broke out somewhere behind them, then clapping. Someone was crying. Another voice whispered, "That's the guy. That's the guy who ran." Jordan ignored all of it. He knelt in front of the girl, now crumpled in her chair, staring straight ahead in shock. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. She blinked. "No, I don't think so." He nodded once, stood, walked away without a word. His backpack still lay where he dropped it. His jacket was soaked from the grit. He picked them up quietly, slipping his arm into the sleeve like nothing had happened. His hands were trembling. He glanced at the wall clock. 8:01 a.m. The scholarship interview was at 8:30. Uptown. No chance now. But somehow, that didn't sting the way it should have. He looked over his shoulder one last time. The girl was alive. And he hadn't waited. He hadn't waited at all. Jordan didn't go home right away. His legs carried him north, one foot in front of the other, past street vendors unpacking warm pretzels, past buskers tuning their guitars, past mothers holding their kids' hands at crosswalks. His jacket hung damp and heavy on his shoulders. Gravel still clung to the knees of his jeans. A faint, coppery sting throbbed in his palms where rust had cut skin. But the adrenaline hadn't worn off, not yet. By the time he reached Madison Square Park, the city had started to blur. The world felt too loud, too bright. The trees were gold-tipped in that early October kind of way, but he barely saw them. His thoughts were stuck looping on the image of the train lights burning through the tunnel, on the feel of the wheelchair's cold frame in his hands, on the girl's eyes wide with terror, her breath, her silence, the moment it all went still. He sat down on a bench and finally exhaled. And then, for the first time since it all happened, he took out his phone. 47 missed calls, 18 texts. His thumb hovered above the first one. From Malika's best friend back in the Bronx. Dude, are you okay? You're all over the damn internet. Turn on the news." Another text. Unknown number. "That video, is that really you?" He frowned and clicked the link. It was shaky, vertical, filmed from someone standing near the edge of the platform. It started mid-shout, capturing a blur of motion, Jordan dropping his backpack, sprinting, leaping into the pit, the train horn, the crowd gasping. And then, impossibly, the moment the wheelchair cleared the edge. No narration, no editing, just raw, frantic footage. Underneath, a flood of comments. "This man deserves a medal. Where was security? Black excellence in action. Why was everyone just filming? Give this man a scholarship." His name was trending. Not just Jordan. Jordan Rivers. He blinked. He hadn't told anyone his name. How the hell? Then it hit him. The woman, the one who helped. She must have asked him on the platform when things calmed down. Maybe someone overheard. It didn't matter now. The story had already taken on a life of its own. He locked the screen and looked across the lawn. People walked their dogs, ate bagels, scrolled their own phones, oblivious. It was strange how a moment like that could split your life in two. 1 second, you're just another guy heading to a meeting that might change everything. The next, the entire city knows your face. But the only thing you can think about is whether you did enough. His phone buzzed again. He let it ring this time. By noon, he was back in the Bronx, standing in front of his mother's apartment. He didn't knock. She always left the door cracked when she knew he was coming. The scent hit him before he stepped in cinnamon and lemon. Always those two. Her way of saying home, without saying a word. She stood in the kitchen in her soft gray cardigan, a dish towel over one shoulder, stirring a pot of beans. Her eyes met his and narrowed immediately. "Jordan Malik Rivers," she said, wiping her hands. "Why are you limping?" He opened his mouth, but before he could answer, she was already in front of him, inspecting his jeans, grabbing his hands. "Blood? Are you bleeding? Where's your jacket? Did you get mugged?" she demanded. "No, Mom. I'm fine. He hesitated. "There was a girl. At the train. She fell. I helped her. That's all." She stopped, blinked. "The girl?" He raised an eyebrow. "You've seen it?" Her face softened. "Baby," she whispered, touching his cheek. "You're on every channel." He exhaled slowly. She sat him down at the table and poured him a glass of sweet tea. As he drank, she leaned on the counter, watching him the way mothers do when they're proud but afraid to show too much of it all at once. "I knew it'd be you," she said. "You've always moved first. Even as a child." He chuckled softly. "I didn't think. I just reacted. That's the best kind of courage," she said. He stayed for an hour. They didn't talk much more about the train. Instead, she asked about the interview. He lied, told her it had gone okay. He didn't want her to know the truth yet. Not that he missed it. Not that the future he'd worked for, the scholarship, the fellowship, the ticket out of endless debt, might have just slipped through his fingers. Later, as he left her building, the neighborhood kids were outside again, playing soccer with a half-flat ball. One of them stopped when he saw Jordan. "Hey," the boy said. "You're that guy from the train, right?" Jordan smiled, half-heartedly. "Guess so." "You saved her," the kid said, wide-eyed. "Like, for real, you were fast." Jordan crouched to his level. "Fast enough, I guess." The boy nodded, then ran off shouting, "He's the guy. That's him." Jordan stood, watched them kick the ball down the cracked sidewalk, laughter echoing through the block like church bells. Jordan truly is a kind and admirable person. Please give him a like to show your support. And before we continue, share where you're watching this video from. Who knows? Someone nearby might be watching it with you too. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt quiet. Later that night, he sat in his small bedroom, staring at the list of missed emails on his laptop. Among them was one with the subject line, "New York Humanitarian Fellowship, follow-up." He clicked it, a single line inside. "We understand you missed your interview. Someone on our board would like to speak with you directly. Please be available tomorrow morning." No signature, no details, just an invitation. Jordan leaned back in his chair. His palms were still raw, his body still sore. But for the first time that day, something inside him settled. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he would show up. The following morning, Jordan stood in front of a glass building in Midtown Manhattan, heart pounding like a second pulse behind his ribs. He'd never been here before, never even dreamed he'd belong here. The sign above the revolving doors read, "The Waters Foundation for Ethical Health Innovation." From the outside, it looked like any other corporate high-rise, polished, intimidating, clean enough to reflect every flaw back at you. He checked his reflection in the lobby window. His charcoal suit was the only one he owned, bought 3 years ago for his mother's hospital board hearing. A bit tight around the shoulders now, but still decent. His shoes were clean. His hands, though still rough from the track, no longer bled. The receptionist, a soft-voiced man in a vest and tie, gave him a badge without asking for ID. "Room 27B, they're expecting you." Expecting him. Jordan took the elevator in silence, surrounded by people who didn't look at him twice. He had rehearsed what he might say 100 times the night before. But now, in the metallic hush of the lift, his mind was blank. When the doors slid open, he was met with a waiting area unlike any hospital boardroom he'd imagined. No sterile walls, no cold chairs, just warm wood panels, soft lighting, and a row of chairs filled with well-dressed men and women. Most were older, white, their suits tailored, watches gleaming. Jordan hesitated at the threshold. Then, at the far end of the room, a man stood. Tall, late 60s, salt and pepper hair combed neatly, a cane resting beside him, though he didn't seem to lean on it much. "Mr. Rivers," he said, "good to see you." Jordan blinked. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" The man smiled faintly, not properly. "My name is Dr. Richard Waters. I'm Emily's father." Jordan's spine stiffened. "Emily, the girl in the wheelchair. You're the one who owes you more than I can say." Waters finished for him. He nodded toward the others seated around the polished mahogany table. "And they're here to listen." Jordan's legs felt suddenly heavier. He stepped forward, swallowed hard. No podium, no speech. Just a chair across from a panel of people who, by the way they crossed their legs and clicked their pens, had heard 100 young applicants before. He sat. The first question came from a woman with silver hair and rimless glasses. "You missed your scheduled interview yesterday?" Jordan nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Something happened." "We're aware. So is the rest of the city," said a balding man to her left, only half smiling. Jordan's mouth went dry. "I didn't miss it because I didn't care. I was on my way. I saw someone who needed help." Another voice, deeper, older. "Would you have done it if no one had been filming?" He met the man's gaze squarely. "Yes, I didn't know anyone was." Silence fell over the room. Jordan thought for a moment he'd said the wrong thing. Then, Waters cleared his throat. "My daughter," he said slowly, "has been in a wheelchair since she was 12. A ski accident. Nerve damage. She doesn't trust strangers. She doesn't let anyone touch her chair. She flinches when people stare." Jordan's throat tightened. "She told me," Waters continued, "that when you reached for her, you didn't hesitate, but you also didn't treat her like she was broken." Jordan didn't know what to say. Waters turned to the rest of the room. "For years, we've given this fellowship based on grades, credentials, ambition. Today, I propose we give it for something else. For integrity, for instinct, for character, when no one's watching." No one spoke. Then the silver-haired woman nodded. "Agreed." The man with the pen clicked it once, leaned forward and said, "Mr. Rivers, welcome to the Waters Fellowship." Jordan exhaled. Not relief, not pride, something keener, something deeper. He rose slowly, shook the hands offered to him, and when Waters clasped his hand last, he whispered, "Emily wants to thank you herself. She'll be at the award reception this Friday. I hope you'll come." Jordan nodded. "I will. Thank you, sir." As he rode the elevator down, alone this time, he stared at his reflection again. Same suit, same face, but the weight on his shoulders had shifted. It wasn't gone, but it was shared. Outside, the city hadn't changed. Horns honked. Taxis raced by. People stared at screens as they walked. But something in Jordan had. His phone buzzed again. Another text. This time from an unknown number. "Hey, this is Emily. I don't remember much from that morning, but I remember your voice. I wasn't alone. That meant everything. See you Friday?" Jordan smiled for real this time. He typed back one word. "Always." Friday evening arrived, cloaked in soft autumn air, the kind that lingered on the skin and carried the faint scent of roasted chestnuts from street vendors below. Jordan stood just outside the glass doors of the Midtown Civic Auditorium, adjusting the cuffs of his white shirt for the third time. The charcoal suit he wore fit better this time, tailored on short notice. A gift from the Waters Foundation, though no one had said that outright. A subtle gesture, like so many of theirs. Inside, the lights glowed low and warm, bouncing off wood-paneled walls and golden chandeliers. The space was elegant, but not ostentatious. It had the hush of a library combined with the reverence of a church. Rows of chairs were neatly arranged, and at the center stood a small stage with a single black podium. Jordan took a breath and stepped inside. There were maybe 60 people in attendance. Not a massive crowd, but distinguished. Doctors, trustees, students in suits, journalists off to the side, their cameras discreet, almost respectful. Classical music drifted softly from the overhead speakers. He spotted Emily first. She sat near the front in a navy dress that matched her eyes, her hair pulled back, a silver bracelet glinting on her wrist. Her wheelchair was sleeker than the one from that day, custom designed, smooth and silent. When she turned and saw him, she smiled and lifted a hand in greeting. He made his way over. "You clean up nice," she said, her voice lighter than before, but still carrying that slight tremble of someone who'd lived in a world always watching. "You too," Jordan replied. "Better wheels." She grinned. "Courtesy of my father's guilt. I told him guilt spending is the best kind." They shared a soft laugh, and for a moment, the tension slipped away. "Thank you for coming," she said, quieter now. "You thanked me already. Not like this." He didn't press, he just nodded, and they sat in silence for a moment before the lights dimmed and a man took the podium. The ceremony began with brief remarks from the foundation director, followed by a video montage honoring past recipients. Then, after a pause, Dr. Waters took the stage. He didn't read from notes. "My daughter nearly died last week," he said calmly. The room hushed. That sentence is hard for me to say, not because of the fear, but because of the truth behind it. She almost died, and no one moved. Several heads turned, awkward in their seats. "No one," he repeated, "except one man, a stranger, who didn't know her name, who didn't stop to consider the consequences. He simply acted." Waters scanned the room. "That man is here with us tonight, and because of him, so is my daughter." A pause. "Please welcome Mr. Jordan Rivers." Applause rose, not thunderous, but full, warm, human. Jordan rose slowly, heart thudding as he walked down the aisle. He felt each step like it meant something. At the podium, the room blurred slightly under the lights. "I didn't prepare a speech," he began, voice steady. "Mostly because I wasn't sure I should be speaking at all." A few polite chuckles. "I'm not a hero. I'm not trained in rescue. I'm not even someone who usually stands out. I'm just a student, a son, a guy trying to do some good in a world that doesn't always make it easy." He paused, eyes scanning the crowd. Emily watched him with an intensity that made him straighten his shoulders. "That morning on the subway, I didn't think. I just moved. And afterward, I kept asking myself why. Why me? Why not the guy closer to her? Why not the person filming? And the answer I kept coming back to was, I don't know. But I do know what my mother taught me." He smiled gently. "She always said, if you see someone in trouble, you don't walk away. You're someone's answer, even if you don't know it yet." A hush fell over the room. I didn't save Emily for applause. I didn't even know her name. But I knew the sound of fear. I've seen it in hospitals. I've seen it in my own mirror. And I couldn't let it go unanswered. He looked down, fingers gripping the edges of the podium, then back up again. "This fellowship means the world to me. Not because of prestige or money, but because it tells me I wasn't wrong to care." The final line hung in the air. And then the room rose. Applause. This time, did come loud. Cameras clicked. Jordan didn't flinch. He bowed his head once and stepped off stage. Emily met him in the aisle. "That was the first time I've ever heard someone speak about me like I was more than a chair," she said softly. "You're a lot more than that," he replied. She reached into her lap and pulled out a small object metal, worn and familiar. "I found this," she said, placing it in his hand. It was his Metro card, scuffed and bent. "You dropped it on the tracks," she said. "I kept it." He turned it over slowly, then smiled. "Guess I've still got one more ride left." Va. They stood in the middle of the aisle, people still clapping, but the sound felt distant now. A new kind of silence formed between them. Not the silence of strangers or of danger, but of understanding. Of two people whose lives had intersected in a moment that could never be erased. Jordan slid the card into his wallet and said, "So, you think your dad would let me take you to dinner without a press release?" Emily laughed, the sound surprising even herself. "I think," she said, "he'd be relieved to know someone else is finally watching over me." Jordan didn't say anything. He just offered his arm, and for the first time in a long while, she took it. 3 days after the ceremony, Jordan found himself standing in front of a quiet brick building tucked between two brownstones in the Bronx. A weathered wooden sign hung above the door, the East Haven Recovery Center. He adjusted the strap of his backpack and stepped inside. The scent hit first lemongrass, industrial cleaner, and something faintly floral, like the aftersmell of a good memory. The lobby wasn't large, but it was warm, lived in. A crocheted quilt draped over the back of a couch. Bulletin boards lined the wall with hand-drawn flyers, Grief Support Thursdays, Chair Yoga with Mrs. Green, and one with a smiling sun that read, "You're here. That's enough today." He walked up to the front desk, where a woman in her 60s sat behind a jar of lemon candies and a desktop computer that looked like it hadn't been updated since the Obama years. "Hi," Jordan said. "I'm here for the fellowship orientation." She peered at him over her glasses, eyes sharp. "Name? Jordan Rivers." Her eyebrows lifted. "Oh, you're that Jordan." He winced. "I guess so." Her face softened. "It's a good thing, sweetheart. Don't worry. Come on. They're in the back room." He followed her through a narrow hallway past softly humming vending machines and open doors where laughter spilled out. A man with an oxygen tank told a joke in one room. Someone was playing piano in another. This place wasn't a clinic. It was a sanctuary. The back room was more like a community center than a classroom. Fold-out chairs in a circle. A whiteboard with the word "Welcome Fellows" in blocky blue marker. There were 8 of them, all seated already young, driven, and visibly exhausted. He slid into the last open chair. A tall woman in a tan blouse stood at the front. Her voice was warm, almost musical. "I'm Miss Delaney, clinical supervisor. This program isn't about titles or ego. It's about service. You're here because you saw something others missed, or because someone saw it in you. We work with patients often overlooked by the system, veterans, seniors, Single mothers, disabled youth, people who don't show up neatly in government spreadsheets. She looked at each of them in turn. If you're here to save the world, you're in the wrong building. If you're here to stand beside someone who needs a reason to keep going, you're exactly where you belong. Jordan felt something shift in his chest, like a gear locking into place. The orientation went on for 2 hours. They reviewed schedule rotations, emergency protocols, how to fill out Medicaid paperwork without losing your mind. By the end, everyone looked drained, but a good kind of drained, like after a long run that you didn't want to take but were glad you did. As the others filed out, Miss Delaney stopped him. "Mr. Rivers." He turned. "Yes, ma'am? You've got someone waiting for you in room 2. He frowned. "Me?" She nodded. Didn't leave a name, just said he wanted to thank you in person. Jordan walked slowly down the hallway to room 2, uncertain. The door was ajar. Inside, seated by the window, was Silas, the old man from the subway station, the one who'd spoken just 5 words that morning. "If you freeze now." He looked different now, cleaner, trimmed beard, wearing a pressed collared shirt and holding a small plastic coffee cup. "Silas?" Jordan said softly. The man looked up. His eyes were clearer than Jordan remembered, brighter. "Didn't think you'd recognize me out of uniform," he said with a wry smile. Jordan stepped in, pulled a chair. You're okay?" Silas chuckled. "Better than okay. That morning, you remember what I said?" Jordan nodded slowly. "You said I'd never forgive myself if I didn't move." "Damn right," Silas said. "Thing is, I didn't say that for you. I said it because I froze. Years ago, in a park, a boy drowning in the lake. I was closer than anyone, and I watched." The room stilled. Silas tapped his chest once. "That boy didn't make it, and I carried that scream in my bones for 36 years. Jordan sat back, quiet. "So when I saw that girl fall, and saw you, I thought maybe, just maybe, this time I could say something that mattered. And you listened. You moved. You changed something." Jordan blinked, throat tight. "You changed something too." Silas smiled softly. "Guess that makes us even." They sat like that for a moment, 2 men separated by a generation, bound by a moment. When Silas stood, his movements were slow, but deliberate. "I volunteer here now. Tuesday afternoons. Laundry mostly. Sometimes I just sit with the vets. They don't need much. Just someone not looking at a clock." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small objectin old subway token, scratched and faded. "Used to keep this in my shoe. A reminder. Now, I think it belongs to you." And Jordan hesitated, then accepted it. "Thank you," he said. "No," Silas said, his eyes warm. "Thank you for proving to an old man that you don't have to freeze forever." He left quietly. Jordan sat alone for a while, the subway token warm in his palm. Outside, the Bronx hummed on. Buses rumbled. Kids laughed. A siren in the distance. But in room 2, for just a moment, time stopped again. And Jordan didn't freeze. He breathed. He smiled. And he stayed. Jordan's first official day as a fellow began at 6:45 a.m., with a lukewarm coffee in hand and the rumble of the Bronx beneath his feet. The city was still waking up, garbage trucks hissing, corner stores unlocking, school kids half asleep at bus stops. He walked the final 2 blocks to East Haven Recovery Center with his stethoscope tucked in his backpack and his thoughts unusually quiet. Inside, the front desk receptionist, Miss Francine, as he'd learned, gave him a wink over her mug of chamomile tea. "Room 5 today, Henry. Morning PT with our toughest nut." Jordan raised a brow. "Toughest?" Francine grinned. "You'll see." He followed the familiar hallway, past the bulletin boards and the piano room, until he reached room 5. He knocked once, then stepped inside. The woman sitting in the wheelchair near the window turned her head slowly. Jordan paused. "Emily." She blinked at him, surprised. Her hair was in a loose braid today, and she wore gray sweatpants and a New York Yankees hoodie. A therapy band lay curled in her lap. "You're the new guy?" she said, folding her arms. Jordan chuckled. "Apparently. And you're my toughest case. I've been told I'm difficult. I've been told I'm patient." A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "Lucky us." He wheeled a stool beside her. "So, What's the issue today? She nodded toward her knees. They're still not listening. Let's see if we can change their minds. The next hour was a mix of stretches, light resistance work, and smart mouth commentary. Jordan learned quickly that Emily didn't like to be coddled. She pushed herself harder than any other patient he'd seen, counting out reps with gritted teeth, eyes narrowed. She hated assistance but tolerated it from him, which he took as a kind of honor. Halfway through their session, she stopped mid-rep and said, "I hated you for a minute, you know?" Jordan blinked. "What?" "After you saved me, that day, I hated the fact that I needed saving, that everyone saw me like that." He didn't speak, just waited. Emily looked down at her lap. "And then, I watched the video, the whole thing, and all I could see was how fast you moved, like you didn't even hesitate." "I didn't. I know, that's what made me cry." Jordan lowered his gaze. "You shouldn't feel ashamed for needing help." She looked at him. "You don't get it. When you live in this chair long enough, you start to feel like the world's just waiting for you to break, and when it finally happens, they film it instead of helping." He nodded slowly. "But that's not all they see anymore." Emily held his gaze for a moment. Then, softly, "Number, thanks to you." After therapy, they grabbed coffee from a cart outside. The air had turned crisper, leaves skimming the sidewalk like tiny flags of change. "You know," she said, sipping from her paper cup, "my dad used to tell me that a single act doesn't define a person, but it does reveal them." Jordan smiled faintly. "Wise man. He's terrified I'm falling in love with the guy who saved me." Jordan froze mid-step. "What?" Emily burst out laughing. "Relax, Romeo. I said he's terrified. I didn't say I am." Jordan grinned, half embarrassed, half intrigued. "Okay, then what are you?" She raised an eyebrow. "Curious." They reached the intersection and waited for the light. Jordan's heart beat louder than traffic. A voice called from behind them. "Rivers." They turned. A man in his late 50s approached, wearing a light windbreaker and a badge that read Sloan. Emily straightened. "Judge Sloan?" Jordan tensed. He recognized the name from the Ceremoneth Stern man on the fellowship board, who had asked if he'd have acted without being filmed. "Didn't mean to startle you," Sloan said, reaching out to shake Jordan's hand. "Just saw your file come across my desk this morning. You're doing the afternoon shift at the Veterans Wing today?" "Yes, sir." "Good. They'll need you." He nodded politely to Emily, then turned back to Jordan. "Can I give you some advice?" Jordan met his eyes. "Of course." Sloan leaned in slightly, voice lowering. "The world doesn't like reminders of its own failures, and when you act with courage, especially in silence, it forces people to reflect. That makes them uncomfortable." Jordan held still. "But keep doing it anyway," Sloan finished. "Because quiet courage? That's the kind that changes people." He clapped Jordan's shoulder once, then walked off, disappearing into the hum of traffic. Emily let out a breath. "What was that about?" Jordan watched the judge fade into the crowd. "I think that was an apology in disguise." Back at East Haven, the afternoon passed in a blur of charts, wheelchairs, and deep breaths. Jordan spent it in the Veterans Wing, guiding a man named Leonard through hip rotations while listening to war stories about Cambodia and the bitter taste of government cheese. When he finally clocked out, the sky had turned burnt orange, and the city wore its dusk like a slow exhale. He took the subway home. Same line, same stop. But when the doors slid open at Fulton Street, he stood still for a moment on the platform. Same tile cracks, same fluorescent buzz. And yet, everything was different now. He walked to the spot near the yellow line, the exact one where he'd seen Emily's wheel slip. He could still feel the tremor of the train beneath his feet. This time, no one was screaming. And still, Jordan looked down onto the tracks, then up at the people. One man was staring at his phone, another sipping coffee. But one Wumana stranger stood quietly, watching him. Her eyes didn't hold fear or curiosity, just a quiet recognition. Jordan gave a small nod. She nodded back. Then he stepped onto the train, and the doors closed behind him. The following week arrived with the soft chill of early November, and a phone call Jordan didn't expect. He was halfway through organizing therapy notes in the East Haven break room when his cell buzzed. The screen showed a number he didn't recognize, Manhattan area code. He answered anyway. "Jordan speaking." A smooth, older voice replied, "Mr. Rivers, this is Rachel Linwood. I serve on the Board of Community Honors for New York State." Jordan blinked. Good morning, ma'am. We're putting together a series of public tributes this winter ordinary citizens who took extraordinary action. You were nominated, unanimously." He swallowed. "I didn't really. I wasn't trying to." "I know. That's why you're perfect for it." Her tone warmed. "There's a luncheon next week at the state courthouse. We'd love for you to attend and speak, if you're comfortable." A moment of silence passed. "I'll be there," Jordan said softly. She thanked him, gave him the time and details, and hung up before he could overthink it. That evening, he told his mom. They sat in the kitchen of her apartment, a familiar pot of gumbo bubbling on the stove, the scent of bay leaf and onion filling the space between them. She listened carefully, as she always did, then wiped her hands on a towel and said, "Just speak the truth. That's always been more than enough." Jordan nodded but said nothing. The idea of standing in front of judges and politicians, of being held up as a symbol, unsettled him more than running into traffic ever had. Still, when the day arrived, he showed up. The luncheon was in a long marble hall lined with portraits and American flags. A string quartet played somewhere near the front, and people in suits moved like clock hands precise and polished. Jordan felt the edge of being out of place creep into his spine. But then he saw a familiar face. Emily, seated near the third row, nodding at him with that knowing smile. She wore a dark blazer and lipstick slightly too bold for the occasion, and she didn't care. Next to her sat Dr. Waters, arms folded, watching everything with quiet pride. Jordan took his seat. His name was third on the program. When they called him, he walked up slowly. No music, no fanfare, just footsteps. At the podium, he paused. The microphone hissed slightly before he spoke. "Most people," he began, "don't wake up expecting to make the news." A few quiet chuckles. "I didn't. I was just trying to get to an interview. I hadn't eaten. My hands were still shaking from the overnight shift." He took a breath. "And then I saw someone fall. And the thing is, I didn't know her name. I didn't know what her life was like. I just knew that she couldn't get out of that situation alone." Jordan looked out across the audience. A lot of people think that bravery is loud, big, dramatic, but it's usually just movement, a step forward when everyone else is frozen. He paused again, fingers lightly touching the edge of the podium. "I'm grateful for the attention this story's brought, not because I needed it, but because maybe it reminded people that being a bystander is a choice, and so is being human." There was silence when he finished. Then applause. Real, honest applause. He returned to his seat, heart racing not from fear but release. Emily leaned over. "Not bad for a guy who didn't prep a speech." He laughed quietly. "Did I at least beat the fireman's story? He had a puppy in the truck, so... No. Later, as guests mingled near the long tables of tea sandwiches and coffee, Jordan wandered the hall alone for a moment. Near the end of the room was a smaller side gallery of framed community photograph-scanned shots from decades of events, fundraisers, and marches. And in the far corner, a new frame sat atop an easel. A photo of him. Not the subway video. Not a news segment. Someone had captured him the moment he'd knelt beside Emily on the platform, his face inches from hers, hands gripping the wheel, eyes locked forward. Underneath, a small plaque read, "Compassion in Motion, Jordan Rivers, 2023. He stared at it, unsure how to feel. He heard footsteps behind him. Judge Sloan appeared, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. "Didn't mean to interrupt," the judge said, handing him one. "Thanks," Jordan murmured. They stood side by side in silence. "You know," Sloan said eventually, "I used to think only verdicts shape society, that the big decisions in courtrooms were where justice lived." He sipped his drink. "But that's not always true. Sometimes, it's in who you become when no one's watching, when no one needs to see." Jordan didn't reply right away. Then, "I didn't want to be a symbol." Sloan nodded. "And that's what makes you a damn good one." They clinked paper cups lightly in an unspoken toast. As the event wound down, Jordan rejoined Emily and her father. Dr. Waters shook his hand, then slipped something into his palm-folded envelope. "What's this?" Jordan asked. something I held onto for too long. He opened it. Inside was an old scholarship rejection letter, dated 5 years prior, addressed to Richard Waters, Maryland. Denied funding for a disability outreach clinic in the Bronx due to budget limitations and low forecasted public interest. Jordan looked up. "I want you to help us build that clinic now," Dr. Waters said. "It'll be under your name, and hers, if she agrees." Emily beamed. "I do." Jordan felt the weight of it land all at once. But it wasn't heavy. It was rooted, like something long overdue finally stepping into light. That night, walking through the city with Emily beside him, her wheels humming softly against pavement, he asked, "You think we're really making a difference?" She glanced at him sideways. "I think we're giving people a reason to believe it's possible. And sometimes, that was enough." It took 3 months to get the lease approved, 2 more to get the funding cleared, and another month just to fight through the city's endless paperwork. But on a brisk February morning, Jordan stood in front of the long vacant community building at the edge of Southern Boulevard, key in hand, heart in his throat. Beside him stood Emily, wrapped in a burgundy coat, her gloved fingers tucked under the sleeves. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, eyes lit with something between pride and disbelief. Behind them, a banner hung across the iron gate in bold navy letters. "The Rivers Waters Rehabilitation Center. Compassion in Motion." "You ready for this?" she asked, glancing up at him. Jordan exhaled, his breath fogging in the air. "Not even a little." "Good," she smirked. "Means we're not taking it lightly." He fit the key into the lock. The heavy metal door groaned as it swung open, revealing the dusty hallway beyond. Light poured through the stained windows, catching in the air like gold dust. The space wasn't pretty yet scuffed linoleum, old paint, ceiling tiles in need of love. But it had structure, bones. It had a future. And it was theirs. Over the next few weeks, a small army of volunteers, former patients, med students, retired nurses, even Silas worked to scrub floors, repaint walls, rewire outlets, and drag in second-hand equipment donated by nearby hospitals. Someone from East Haven even brought over a barely used hydrotherapy tank. Jordan handled the therapy rooms, overseeing everything from layout to lighting. Emily focused on patient accessibility, clear entry points, easy signage, wheelchair-friendly counters. She even insisted on a therapy garden for people who need quiet more than words. One evening, Jordan was sweeping near the entrance when he heard footsteps behind him. It was Miss Delaney, his old supervisor from East Haven, holding a small box. "You're not good at resting, are you?" she said. "I was resting," he replied. "Just happened to be holding a broom." She smiled and held the box toward him. Inside was a plaque, carved in simple bronze letters, dedicated to the ones who moved when others stood still. His throat tightened. "I can't accept this," he said. "Yes," she said softly. "You can." They hung it near the front desk, just under the reception window. The official opening ceremony came on a Saturday in March, under an early sun that felt like a promise. People came in coats and gloves, but their spirits were warm. Emily's father spoke briefly, eloquent, proud, but kept the spotlight where it belonged. Silas read a poem he wrote, shaky but strong, about second chances and streetlight wisdom. Even Judge Sloan made a surprise appearance, delivering a speech so short and pointed that Jordan would remember only one line. "This building isn't just made of brick. It's built from breath." When Jordan stepped to the mic, he didn't have a speech prepared. He just looked out at the crowd, took a breath, and spoke from wherever the words came. "I used to think I needed to do something big to matter," he began. "But then I realized what changes people isn't size. It's presence. It's the moment you step towards someone instead of away." He paused. This center was born not from a perfect plan, but from an imperfect day, a day where something went wrong, and instead of watching it happen, I moved, and so did someone else, and then another. He turned to Emily, who nodded once. "So if you came here today thinking you're too small to make a difference, you're wrong. You're exactly the right size." Applause swelled, but Jordan barely heard it. His eyes found his mother near the back, her coat buttoned up to the neck, her hand clutched around the arm of her church friend Mrs. Delgado. She was crying. He smiled. Later that night, long after the crowd had cleared and the folding chairs had been stacked and the leftover sandwiches packed away, Jordan stood in the center of the new therapy room. The walls were painted soft green, and in the corner sat a set of resistance bands beside a new rowing machine. Emily entered quietly behind him. "You didn't cry during your speech," she said. "I'm saving it for our first plumbing disaster." She laughed, then more seriously. "Do you ever wonder if none of that had happened, if I hadn't fallen, if you hadn't seen me, where we'd be right now?" Jordan thought for a moment. "Probably in two very different lives, still trying to prove something to the world." She nodded. "And now? Now I don't care if the world sees it, as long as the right people feel it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the old subway token Silas had given him months before. "I keep this," he said, "to remind me not of that day, but what it meant. That doing the right thing doesn't always come with clarity. Sometimes it just comes with noise and fear and your knees hitting gravel." Emily smiled. "And sometimes it comes with another chance." She reached into her own pocket and pulled out something small and folded. A photo. It was a grainy printout of the same moment Jordan had seen at the courthouse, the one of him and Emily on the platform, caught in the seconds before impact. "I keep this," she said, "because it reminds me that I wasn't alone. Not then, not now." Jordan looked at her, quiet for a long moment. Then, "You ever think about that question your dad's so scared of?" Emily tilted her head. "Which one?" "If we're falling for each other." She smirked. "Only every time you say something poetic." He stepped closer. "Not rushed, not dramatic, just real." "Then maybe it's time I stop saying it and start showing it." They stood there, between resistance bands and sun-warmed windows. No train horn in the distance, no eyes watching. Just two people, still moving, together. The following summer arrived not with fanfare, but with sunlight that lingered longer on the streets and mornings that smelled of cut grass and possibility. By then, the Rivers Waters Rehabilitation Center had become more than just a place. It was a rhythm, a living pulse in the heart of the Bronx. Every morning at 7:15, Jordan unlocked the doors. The same key every time. The same pause as he looked up at the plaque by the entrance. "To those who moved when others stood still." He'd touch it gently before walking in, like a habit he never meant to form but couldn't imagine breaking. Inside, the walls now held life-patient drawings, candid photos, a weekly calendar scrawled with events like Chair Salsa with Miss D and Open Mic, Tell Your Story. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't flawless, but it was full, honest, worn in like a good pair of boots. That morning, Jordan wheeled in a new patient named Benya, wiry teenage boy with an overconfident smirk and one leg missing below the knee. "You sure this ain't a daycare for tired grown-ups?" Benny asked, surveying the room like it owed him an apology. Jordan grinned. "Only if you promise to cry during nap time." Benny cracked a grin despite himself. An hour later, they were working through resistance band stretches while Jordan gently corrected Benny's posture. From the front desk, Emily watched, her eyes narrowed not with judgment but with focus. Jordan could feel it, that subtle charge in the room when she was near. He glanced at her briefly between exercises, mouthing, "Coffee after?" She mouthed back, "You're buying." At noon, they sat outside on the small wooden bench beneath the building's only tree, a stubborn maple that had survived 3 decades of harsh weather and 2 sidewalk repairs. The leaves rustled overhead, and the sun filtered through in golden flecks across Emily's lap and Jordan's shoulder. "Benny's going to give you gray hair," Emily said, sipping her iced coffee. "I'm counting on it. I've been told it adds credibility." She laughed. "He reminds me of me, all fire and defiance." Jordan nodded. "And you turned out okay." She leaned back, thoughtful. "It's strange. Some days I forget what happened. The train, the fall. It feels like a different life." He turned to her. "Maybe because it was. That day split everything." She looked at him. "Do you ever miss it? The version of you before?" He paused. Sometimes. He didn't worry as much, but he also didn't know what it meant to actually show up. She reached out, brushing a bit of lint from his sleeve. "You still do that? Show up?" Just then, a car pulled up along the curb. Jordan's mom stepped out, dressed in her Sunday best, though it was Thursday floral print dress, her good earrings, and the shoes that always made her wince by afternoon. He stood immediately. "Mom, I didn't know you were. I came to see it, she said simply, eyes scanning the front of the building. I've seen the pictures, but I wanted to feel it, see the place my son helped build. Emily stood too, offering a gentle smile. We're honored to have you. Jordan's mother walked slowly up the ramp, pausing at the threshold to touch the plaque. Her fingers traced the words, and her eyes welled. Inside, Jordan led her through each hallway, the therapy room where Silas now held twice-weekly storytelling circles, the quiet room painted in seafoam green where patients journaled or sat in silence, the small kitchen stocked with tea and toast, because sometimes healing started with warmth. They ended the tour at the rooftop garden, a modest patch of planters filled with herbs, tomatoes, and wildflowers that Emily had insisted on, even when the budget didn't allow for it. This is my favorite part, Jordan said, helping his mother to a shaded bench. It's the one place in the city that doesn't rush. She took his hand, squeezing gently. I'm proud of you. I know, he whispered. I just needed to hear it today. They sat there in the stillness, the breeze teasing the leaves, the city below unaware that something holy lived just a few floors above it. Later that evening, long after the building had emptied and the sun had melted behind the skyline, Jordan stayed behind. He stood in the therapy room alone, turning off the lights one by one. Then he saw it. Taped to the mirror by the wall was a sticky note. Simple handwriting, a kid's scrawl. Thanks for not giving up on me. B. He smiled and tucked the note into his pocket. Out front, Emily waited on the steps. Long day, she said. Good one, though, he replied. They started walking, side by side, the sidewalk humming beneath them, streetlights flickering on one by one like applause for simply enduring. You know, Emily said, voice soft, you never did finish telling me what you were thinking that day. When you ran down onto the tracks, what went through your mind? Jordan looked ahead, thought for a moment. I saw someone falling, he said, and I thought if that were my mom, or my sister, or you, I'd want someone to move. She nodded slowly. You didn't know me then. I do now, he said, turning toward her. And I'd still run. They stopped beneath a street lamp. No one else was around. Just the sound of the city breathing and two hearts caught in a silence that didn't need to be broken. Jordan leaned forward, not with urgency, not with performance, but with the quiet certainty of someone who'd spent his life earning every inch of forward motion. And Emily met him halfway. A kiss, not to end a story, but to begin the one they chose for themselves. Still moving, still choosing, always forward.